With me here today is Craig Junjulas. You say you're a metaphysical teacher, is that right?
That's right.
So I just want to welcome everyone to another edition of Emerging Hearts Spiritual TV. So today we're going to be talking to him, find out a little bit more about him, what he does, what his path is, and so forth. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, I've been in the field professionally. Where I quit my job was March 1981, and I was, doing readings and classes at fairs and things. So the year or two before that, and I've had to do other jobs in between. Like when I moved to Sedona, I had no practice here, so I did learn how to build houses. So I've always blended the very physical world with the metaphysical world. And I guess my talent and my gift is to be able to go inside something, get it, and then be able to give it to someone else in a way they can understand and use it too. So to me, that's more of a teacher, to draw the wisdom from within the other person up to the surface in a usable fashion. Didn't want to participate in doing healings, putting my hands on people, getting a table. I still say, well, I don't want to do psychic readings, but if I have to, I will. But I loved teaching, lecturing, that kind of thing. So I found out early, that one of my talents is to be able to express things to other people in a way where they get it. The metaphysical just happened to be where I looked, where I went. I was in the physical world doing science. I went to auto mechanics high school. I worked in landscaping, put roofs on houses to get through college, became a medical technician. So, and science. So I've always had that grounding physical part. And what was lacking was the upper part that I denied. I was agnostic, actually antagonistic toward religions. And I said, well, if these things happened in the Bible, why aren't they happening now? And I folded my arms and closed my mind. So it took kind of a explosive can opener effect to wake me up. And when I did, and I realized, oh my goodness, there's so many other dimensions. I'm an explorer. And what do I do when I explore? I want to come back to the Explorers Club and tell everybody what it's like in the bottom tip of Africa, and how to deal with the things that are there. So I would say that I was surprised at that there was other dimensions and other beings, and I was surprised that I was able to access it so readily. So I did. But I always kept the balance, even mining crystals for years, swinging a sledgehammer on solid rock to balance the spiritual and the physical.
And was that something, did you have like a quantum leap that took you to that point? And did you always have kind of like indications of that throughout your life? Maybe you denied it or what?
Yeah, childhood was trying to act like the other people in the room. Not real good at it. I mean, I guess these days they would probably label me as having attention deficit disorder because I'm always looking above the teacher's head and out the window, and no retention of what was said. So if the teacher walked up to my desk and I'm looking out the window, my mouth open, said, "What did I just say?" I said, "Oh, you said, Craig, what did I just say?" That's the only thing I remembered. I got in trouble for being, a smart aleck or whatever.
Yeah.
I was just being honest. So being honest didn't work. Telling my parents that there was a lady in the closet coming out at night and looking at me, that didn't go over very well. I was the youngest, so by the time I was adamantly trying to explain to my adult people, my parents, that there was a lady and she died in the past and she was visiting and needed help, it was total fantasy, and my oldest siblings couldn't really back me up because they went to that age where there's no more invisible friends and these things don't exist. So I would say that what happened to me was like a jack in the box, it's just sprung and the wheel is turning and the music is playing, that I had to use more and more pressure to keep my spiritual nature, my creativity, my clairvoyance down in the box. And then I was in a marriage that was not working very well for either party, in a job that my boss loved me and I was good at it, but I felt trapped. And then when the bosses changed and it became corporate BS, I'm not real good at that. So even in high school, I created an underground newspaper because we weren't allowed to do. And so that part of me, that rebellious part came up, and the whole thing kind of exploded at a certain point and opened my mind in a kind of shake the beer can, then pop it open experience.
I like too, you talked about something about being the wounded healer. You want to talk about that as well?
No.
No.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, that's what a wounded person does. No, leave me alone. Yeah, that whole concept of trying to be responsible, it goes back even further. When I was 16, my father died. And I was planning in that spring to just run away from home and go to California with a guitar and, join a band kind of a thing. And all these adults at the funeral putting their hands on my shoulder, which in hypnotherapy is, you're really implanting that message. You're the man of the house now. You know your father built that house for your mother. Take care of it. You're responsible. So all that went in. And I ended up being kind of wild in nature, trying to not be so. Kind of like a lion in the nature, trying to exist in the zoo and adapt to it. So I was all pent up and going in circles inside myself and building tension and using sheer will and responsibility to stay on this narrow path of responsibility. So I did the responsible things, and I got married at 21. And then I worked in the corporation. And then what happened was I was having so many symptoms, physical symptoms, burning legs, headaches, confusion. My veins were getting rope-like. And I went to the doctors, and they said, there's nothing neurologically wrong. It's stress-related, psychosomatic, body and mind. So I went to a psychiatrist only because he was a biological psychiatrist. He believed in the chemistry was different. So I could go through that door. And I was talking to him for about a year, and it was kind of boring. And I said, what a waste of time. But it was covered by Major Medical, and I was in a corporation. So I said, let's explore it. So it was more as an explorer. And then I had a breakthrough in the therapeutic terms. For the client on the couch, it's a breakdown. So the old system dies or breaks down, and the other stuff you've been repressing comes flooding up, and it comes up the spine to the head, because the head is the part saying, stay down there. And then this part comes up, can I please leave or be expressed or something? So it was like a volcano going on. So they put you on Valiums. I took a lesser type of drug, and I took the lowest dose and then broke the pills in half, and only took them when I was having like hallucinations, like my mother flying across the lab on a broom, like in the Wizard of Oz. And I was like, okay, I kind of penetrated something else here, but I considered it to be fantasy and all that. And then I did a meditation from a book called Relaxation Response. It was TM, done scientifically. All right, it's a doctor saying it's scientific, I'll try it. Basically, I bored my mind with a mantra. And I found myself in this beautiful, blissful place with beings that were glowing and shining so bright I couldn't look up. I was spoken to, I don't remember what was said, but as I came back to the meditational room, I heard, go back and heal your brethren and sistren, plural, plural. Now, at the time, I'm broken. I don't think anybody should take any advice from me. I don't really trust the inside system because it's breaking down and short-circuiting. So I read a couple of 100 books. That's the way I worked it out. Self-help, pop psychology, not so much the high meditation, but Edgar Cayce books and basic stuff. And I went to this class called, like my class, Self-Discovery. I forget what it was called back then. And they talked about the chakras and aura and healing and relaxation. And I found myself feeling very comfortable, very familiar with the concepts. But I still didn't believe in it. So I took these classes, and there was one technique especially where you're breathing healing energy to the side of your head, letting it go down to the gut brain and up the other side. So now instead of this stuff coming up one road into my head, my intellect, my ego, the pressure was able to be released, like opening a pressure cooker. First you let the pressure out, or on your radiator in your car. First you depressurize it. So I had this mechanism that was wonderful. I said, why don't the psychotherapists have these tools?
Mm.
So at the time, my idea was to blend the psychic and the science together and hopefully train psychotherapists to use more metaphysical tools. So that's what gave me the impetus to continue, even though it was personally difficult. And it was a very, very trying time. I mean, I was in trauma for a while, and I had moments of this bliss, of this freedom. So I had the both the polarity, and I, of course, wanted to shift towards the metaphysical. Still didn't believe in it, though.
Last time we talked, you used this term Saturn return, and this sounds like kind of like the period you were in. Is that correct? You want to explain that? Tell me more about what that means.
Sure. Saturn it's the only planet I really pay attention to. When someone says, oh, Mercury's retrograde, I go, I don't care. I'm going to sign the contract anyway. To me, that's like you go to the airport and the moving sidewalks aren't working. So walk. You know, takes a little longer. Don't stop at the Starbucks. Go to your gate. So that's how, but Saturn, for some reason, it kept on coming to me. Pay attention to it. It takes Saturn about 28 and a half years to go around the sun one time. And every 7 years, you go through a change. So it was like, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 12 o'clock. And from 0 to 7, you're basically learning as a spirit to inhabit and work with the physical body. So by 7, you can do gymnastics, sports, martial arts, whatever you need to do. 7 to 14, you learn to enter your etheric body. And it's all about energy exchange. I want to be with my friends. I need to connect and merge energies. And looking for parental approval on an energetic level. Pay attention to me. Oh, you don't want to pay attention to me? Well, if I break that vase, at least you'll spank me. I'll get some etheric energy from it. And then around 14, halfway, 14 and a half, it's Saturn opposition. Now that's a big change. That's child to man, child to woman. So difference between a 12-year-old and a 16-year-old, two different creatures. And then you have another big one, where you have another change at 21. So at 14, you learn to enter your emotional body, astral body. And at 21, you learn to live in your mental body, which makes sense because we think we know everything from 21 to 28. And then at 28, you start to enter your spiritual body, which says, you know nothing. Well, yes, you do know this. You know what can fit on the head of a pin, or the tip of a pin, the other end, actually, compared to the vast universe. So that's the time where people have an opportunity to awaken. Now, if you're reluctant, you get dragged through it. It's very limiting time, very difficult time. If you go with the flow and you ride the currents of it, you can use it to elevate yourself to the next level. And back when I was a teenager, it was don't trust anyone over 30. And that kind of coordinates with the Saturn return. And I noticed that people in their 30s at the corporation, they gave up. They were going to be there or in a similar place for the rest of their life. And I looked at that road and I just said, then why live? Yes, it's a good job. I'll have two cars and garage. Maybe I'll have a boat and a house, but I'll probably drink cyanide. I couldn't go through that whole trip. Yeah. So I realized I needed to be creative, to be artistic too. I wanted to be a songwriter, an artist, and that kind of thing. So it was a reawakening of that. So the Saturn return happens at 28, and it's a chance for you to kind of go through a rebirth. Like it or not, you're going to go through stuff. And you emerge either going up or holding on to the bottom and trying to stay at the bottom of the tank. The catfish and the crabs and stuff saying, I'm just afraid of going higher. So it's a big change in time. And then again at 43, 44, second Saturn opposition, that's when a lot of things change as well. So let's take the reproductive system. At 14, Saturn opposition, it turns on in the female, and the eggs start to come to bear, be accessible. And then around 43, 44, they start to shut down. So that's the reproductive cycle. That's for the body. And before that, it's the spirit trying to adapt to the earth. And after that, the spirit trying to be productive on the earth. So when you get to your second Saturn return around 58, 59, 60, it's world healer time. What am I going to do to dedicate to the rest of my life to the world, to the universe, or am I preparing to just break down and leave? So I use that as a basic biological clock. It's just a planet, but it's an indicator.
Yeah.
Very strong influence.
Okay. We talked a little bit before, and it seemed like we had our awakenings probably about the same age in some sense. And I know for me, going into that, it's kind of like it opens up new vistas for you, and it really is a rebirth, death and rebirth, and then you have to kind of like re-educate yourself all over again. I remember one of the people I came across was Ken Wilber, who did Spectrum of Consciousness. I don't know if you're familiar with him or not.
I don't know. I read a couple of consciousness books. That didn't ring a bell.
Yeah.
10 Keys rings a bell more.
He was, it was like late 70s. And interesting thing about it was really kind of like, I know Alan Watts did some of this in terms of combining psychotherapy East and West.
Yeah.
You know,
Am I read that?
And so Ken Wilber, what he did something very similar in that he was mapping consciousness, but he was looking at the spiritual traditions around the world and then looking at all the various types of experiences that they talked about and the levels of consciousness as well. Does that relate in some way to what you do as well?
Over the years, I have looked at it, not so much as an anthropologist comparing the Dogon tribes thinking and the South African thinking, but mine goes more back in time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking back at ancient teachings, ancient history, and then the oral traditions and practices of today based on how far back does it go. So for example, the Dogon tribe in Africa, they talk about these beings coming down and giving them and teaching them certain things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the theme I've been looking for. Native Americans, Africa, the Bible. It's all about these beings interacting. I want to find out who these guys were.
Mm-hmm.
Why were they here? What were they doing? And when I was a child, or younger, I did some comparative religion studies. Well, actually, part of it was as a Boy Scout, they wouldn't trust me to stay in the campsite without adult supervision, because I would find a way to get in trouble, to build something or start a fire or something, because I was curious and mischievous. So I had to go to some synagogue or church. So I ended up going to all these different religious places. And I didn't like the Catholic because I didn't know when to stand up and sit down. I didn't want to go to the Jewish one because I didn't like the hat. I mean, it was really, really, childlike preteen surface. And I started reading about the different religions, like why were they this way? And what I was reading was so different from what I was seeing in the corporation of the structure, organizations of the churches. So I wanted to find out more about how they started and who are the people who started it. So I wanted to know, what did Jesus say? Not what are they saying about his words now? And then I wanted to find out, well, what did he say that they didn't publish? What was edited out? And that was the lost books of the Bible and the Apocrypha and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. So it kept on spreading me further and further out into time and cultures. So it was a very wide, very broad kind of base with not much specifics. Mm-hmm. And then I would study about consciousness itself, how to go into altered states. Well, back then, they were fun. And it was an alternate reality. It wasn't, I'm not in this. It's like if I was in prison, I would become an expert and a great author on astral travel because I'm in a small cell. So let's leave the body and make books about it and help, understand it. So a lot of my action was adaptation to situation. The curiosity was about ancient history and what's going on now. How does it compare to what went on in the past? So I can see what's being hidden now. It really was about the secrets that were being hidden was a big part of my journey.
So that relates to, you talk about anthropology. So tell me about your background and interest in that and so forth.
Well, actually, I'm not that interested in it because of the restrictions on it. It's like if I'm in a Star Trek episode and I'm seeing stuff going on this planet and people are suffering, I want to go down there and volunteer. Just drop me off. I'll do what I can. I can't stay in the ship and just watch them suffer and take notes on it. Mm-hmm. So an anthropologist is not supposed to interfere. Mm-hmm. So I didn't quite like that approach. Mine is more like, go tribal and then come out of it a few years later and write about it. And use it in your everyday life. Like when I go shopping for food, what would I have to do in the jungle? Well, I'd have to catch this thing first. Mm-hmm. Where I have to go out and dig up the roots. Here they are in a nice little plastic bag. So I still relate the past to the present. I try to see the pathways, but it's the anthropology. It's a study of the way things are, and then what are the theories behind it, like to make it understandable to the modern world. And that's where a lot of rationalization comes in. Same thing with archaeology. I'm not interested in archaeology in that sense. Yeah, dig things up, but I don't want you to tell me what they meant. And I know there's boxes in the museums with modern tools buried because they didn't fit the archaeological
Like
site.
the out of place objects, essentially.
Yes.
Yes,
So
right.
that's what I research. What was out of place? And that's kind of, how I refine things. So if I'm going to look at something, I want to see what was taken out and why, because most of it, it's juicy, it's good, it's powerful, it's helpful for the individual to have personal power, not have to look to authorities. And that's a big part of my work, is freeing people to answer to their higher self and follow their true path as best as they can, rather than follow a religion or a philosophy or a teaching or a teacher even.
So kind of in relationship to that, you're in Sedona now, correct? And so you had a journey there into what you're doing now. Talk about that development. You also talked about some things in relationship to like Japanese culture, New Zealand, and so forth. So talk about that journey and progression.
Well, how I got to Sedona was my advanced students were doing meditation. I was in the other room overseeing it. And I usually do something like I have a candle burning. I'll put my hand through the candle slowly. Now that I study hypnotherapy, I understand what I was doing. If I bring someone into a state to talk to a negative part of them, like, can I speak to that part of you that's causing the problem? You want them to be in a medium deep trance. And you test it by having the arm out stiff and say, it won't bend, and you push down really hard and it doesn't move. You know they're in a deep enough state to talk to that part of them without disturbing their conscious mind or their surface subconscious, the closest interface in the subconscious. So I was doing things like putting my hand in the flame slowly so that I knew I was in a deep enough state to protect them, to guide them if something was needed. And in one of those times, I had a map. Actually, it was the phone book open to the map of the US. So it's only this big, on yellow paper. And I took a fine point big pen and I asked, where do you want me to go? And I poked the paper behind me two times. And one of the spots was just below Flagstaff in Arizona. And my first response was, oh, desert. What am I going to be, like eating locusts now? Is that my journey? And then over the years, talking to people, they said, oh, I've been to this place. It's called Sedona. And then I didn't want to go there because it was, full of psychics. And it just kept on coming up. That's where I needed to go. So I asked my wife, can we, I need to move there. And she said, don't you think we should visit first? It makes sense, but I'm willing to just pack up. I can live anywhere for 2 years. But I've lived in the same county my whole life. So I moved to Sedona at 44. And I felt the Native American connection calm down inside of me, and the feeling of home and the energy and the red rocks. I found my place, at least for now. And I lost the question. I was rambling a bit.
About how you got to Sedona and so forth. That's where you're at.
So I actually answered the question. That's even better.
Yeah. But then there was a journey, because you were talking about being involved with like the Chamber of Commerce and so forth. And some of that was also about how like you were really reluctant in a way, and just circumstances just kind of forced you down the path, right?
Yeah, well, that's kind of been my history. Reluctant messiah, reluctant healer, reluctant psychic, reluctant healer, whatever. And I always look around like, who, me? No, wait, anyone, who's supposed to be doing this? And then I find out, oh yeah, it is mine to do. So one of the things I did when I first got there was I had no practice anymore, really. So I went hiking every day, and I would meditate on the hill and say, what should I do now? And a voice said, circle jobs in the newspaper. So I did. I didn't want to work, so I just circled and put the paper down. I went up a few days later, same spot. What should I do? And the voice in this kind of tone. Now call the jobs you circled. Oh, okay. Yeah, I kind of knew I was supposed to do that, but thought I can get away with it. So I went there, and then I heard a song from way, way back when I was a little child. And it was like, get a job, sha-na-na-na, sha-na-na-na, get a job. So, all right, now they're singing old 1950s rock tunes to me. Time to call one of those places. So I took the job building houses. I thought, well, I could learn how to build a house from the ground up. That might be interesting, learn a new trade. And then when I was in the phone interview, the guy said to me, well, I'm not looking for a specialist. I want someone who wants to build a house from the ground up. And I know enough when synchrony pinches my ear that I should listen and probably follow. So I took that job, and it was $8 an hour. But the first job I had was to jackhammer the concrete floor and the red rocks underneath the floor so that the woman's husband could lift weights in the basement. And this woman ended up becoming a city councilwoman. A few years later, the city councilwoman and the CEO of the chamber are looking for someone to start this nonprofit company to be an affinity group for the Chamber of Commerce, because they were having trouble trying to represent our field. And the different stores and people come and say, oh, don't use the name New Age, don't use the name Psychic, you must use and they were getting confused. They wanted one group to help represent the community and to help that community too, because we were really being put down, laughed at, ridiculed. So they needed kind of a warrior energy. I didn't know that at the time. So I'm saying, me, run a company, I don't even check my checkbook. I just say the bank says this much, and then I use the money. So I thought I was totally unqualified. So I'm pushing this cart in the store. The city councilwoman, I haven't seen for a few years, is talking to me saying, I met with the president and we want you to run this. I said, how did you come to that conclusion? Well, my psychic tarot book, which I wrote in 1985, she found that book and she read it, and it was one of her favorite tarot books. So when she found out that I lived in town, she goes, that's it, he's the one. So I'm waiting for this woman to stop trying to sell it so I can tell her no thank you. And when she was done, like a burp, I'd be honored, came out of my mouth. That doesn't happen very often. If I'm channeling, it's like that, but not in regular conversation. So it felt important. It took me over a year to really put it together with the right people before we allowed it to become incorporated. And one of the things that happened in that first year was Japanese visitors came, tourist companies, saying, we want to bring people to Sedona for the spiritual vortexes and experiences. Who can we talk to? So they sent them to me. And that's how I met the Japanese people. And then one company in particular wanted to send me some clients. I said, that's okay. And then he brought an artist over, Minio Akiyama, and he was doing dot paintings, and he did mandalas. And he had 64 mandalas and wanted to create an oracle deck, and asked if I could do it. And of course, my mind said no. And then something else inside said, give it a try. So actually, I brought them over just to show you. I don't think I showed you last time. So these are the cards. Different designs, some very basic. And so I meditated on each card and came up with, a name. And at the bottom is a little bit of a fortune cookie kind of thing. And then in the booklet, more explanation. So the Psychic Tarot book was how I got asked to do meet the Japanese people and to work with the new company, to create a new company. And it was also the tarot cards that made the artist from Japan think I created it was the Aquarian deck that I wrote the book for. So when you bought the Aquarian deck back in the 80s or even 90s, that's the book that came with it as the companion. So that same book, when I first wrote it, they wanted to just pay me a flat fee, $2,000. And I said, no, I'll take a low percentage, but I need to be invested in the book. And my guidance was, don't worry about the income. The book will work as a business card later on in your career. So I just did follow my guidance, and so the book has actually led me to 2 or 3 other opportunities, and that was one of them. So I started going to, I was traveling to New Zealand and teaching there, and not making very much money because of the exchange rate and the low amount they pay readers. And then when I was asked to go to Japan, I said, well, all right, let me make a right-hand turn. I'll spend 2 weeks in New Zealand, and I'll spend 3 weeks in Japan, see what it's like. And that's how it started. And that was 13 years ago, around there.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was going to Japan 4 times a year. And then my guidance was to cut it down to 3 and eventually to 2. So this year was supposed to be 2, maybe last year, supposed to be 2. And I was still planning 3 because I didn't follow my guidance. And my March trip was, of course, canceled because of the coronavirus.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I still have my tickets on Saturday. Just about 5 days before, I got the signal trip is canceled. So then I had to argue with the United Airlines to get the sponsor to get their money back for the tickets. And I was doing that while I'm at a conference in LA, hypnotherapy conference I was presenting at. So I was doing all that, and then Monday, instead of going to Japan on March 9th, turned around, came back to Sedona, and self-isolation. Because I was in a conference for 3 days in LA. So I just isolated. So I've been here since. So that's kind of the pathway. And if you notice, it's more of a following the guidance and doing things and then seeing later on how they worked out rather than planning and preparing and all that.
Have you experienced anything like in Sedona? Is there something about the energy of the place or the native people who live there? Any connections that you feel?
Well, the way we describe it here in town is the Native Americans who come here for ceremony,
Mm-hmm.
they were smart.
Mm-hmm.
We come here to build houses. We're not so smart.
Mm-hmm.
It's like living on top of a washing machine where it's always churning and moving. And, people come here for 3 days or a week and, their stuff will come up and they'll process and they'll feel much better. And, like going through a sun ceremony or going through a sweat lodge. But if your living room is the sweat lodge, it's a bit much to go through.
Yeah.
So, but we have different clusters here. We have an artistic community. We have a drama community. The music community is really like what the psychics were, 10, 15 years ago. They're more oppressed. No sound after 10 o'clock at night, because people will call and complain.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to raise the acceptance of the psychic community by that company we started. And what I found is the people here in town that live here, there's people on the outside, regular people, and the people kind of on the inside are tapping into the energy and flowing with it. It's like living near the ocean. You have people 3 blocks in and they'll walk down to the ocean and go for relaxing walks. People 3 miles in hardly ever go to the beach. So you kind of have that here, where you have the intense energy of the vortexes in the actual Sedona cup. And then you have the green valley all around it and the towns around it. So it gets more, not dilute. The waves calm down as it goes further and further away from Sedona. But you don't have to go to a vortex and sit on it to feel it. I'll sit in my backyard and I can just tune in and feel the energy from Cathedral Rock flowing through the property. Mm-hmm. So I know how to kind of ride the waves. But it's very intense and it makes you go through processes, rapid, deep processes. So some of us are a little wacky because of it. So not quite colander on the head with aluminum foil, but when you see a plane going overhead and you realize, well, there's cold air up there and hot desert air down here, you're going to have trails. And people are like saying, chemtrails, they're trying to poison us and make us not psychic anymore. So we have a percentage of that and maybe a bit of a concentration also. Mm-hmm. But what I said to my group is, hey, we represent them too. Don't make fun of them. We have to represent everybody.
I would be interested in hearing about some experiences of people you've worked with or messages you received. Some things are very profound. that you can relate?
That I can remember. Well, let's just say that when I was doing private sessions, I always started them by first telling them their history, kind of testing myself each time, like me putting my hand in the candle. And I would say, you know, at 4 years old, I see this, and describing their childhood personality. It also helps me to get in touch with them empathically before their programming from this lifetime took effect. Like, what were they like in the schoolyard looking up, you know, before second grade and third grade and high school and all that. The messages, it's really what the person needs. I'm not known for holding back. Sometimes in Japan, in the first year, my translators used to tell me, please explain to them that you're rude and don't take it personally. So I would say, you know, I'm from New York originally, and you might consider me rude, but if you ask me a question, I will answer you fully. Mm-hmm. And if you want to know if that, you know, how do I describe this? The best example is this. When my wife got a haircut and a perm at the same time, it was like from long hair to this sort of like pyramidal shaped thing. You come back from the hairdresser, it's exaggerated. And I'm doing my work, and she said, no, you didn't notice. I said, oh, I noticed. Went back to work. She goes, well, what do you think? Oh, don't ever ask Craig that question. What do you think? Because I have to tell you what's right here. Oh, I said, you look like a poodle. So that's what I deliver. So, you know, I'm right now, you know, I'm sort of a minister work too. I'm helping someone, a student from the old days. Her daughter called me, mom has a brain tumor, doesn't have long to stay, and I'm working with her on the phone. So I have to talk about death. I have to talk about, you know, how do you want to go? When do you know, how do you want to process this? How can I help you live between now and that day, you know, more fully? And then how can I help you cross over the way that you choose, or the way that is, you know, most reasonable under the conditions? And then just a few months ago, I did the same thing. Daughter of an old friend called. So that to me is the most profound work. It's very quiet. It's not charged for. But when I'm doing regular readings and this and that, I'm still surprised each time that I'm able to say the things I'm able to say. And I'm sure when you're trying to teach somebody, or you're doing the group and someone's trying to give messages, they get the same thing. How do I release this information without editing or holding back or exaggerating or putting a personal twist on it? So I would say the most profound thing is the volume or the consistency of the high, how could you possibly know it kind of things that come out. So I asked Spirit, why? Why am I good at that? I mean, what does that serve? And they said, it's part of your protocol. In other words, I'm sitting with the stranger. They don't know me. I don't want them to trust me just because I don't want to trust every teacher, every psychic. So I have to show to them that I can see inside. And that's why I test myself in front of the client that way. I'm not suggesting people do this. This just happened to be how I evolved. And now I don't do it so much. It just doesn't seem necessary because I'm teaching, and the people that are coming to me are already kind of filtered. They know me, or they saw me on the YouTube channel. So I don't have to do that, break the ice, get rapport, go deep inside, you know, in kind of a quantum way, so I can do quantum entanglement, like I'm doing now with the people in Japan on Zoom or with you, where there is no time and space, and you are connected to such a degree that if the person you're working with turns, you turn with them. You know, you're becoming the same particle, a twin particle. And I realized I was doing that at the beginning of each session. So to me, that's the most profound thing, was the feeling of oneness, the linking, taking the risks. And then at a certain point, that first period goes away, and the information and the energy is just, it's beautiful. It's like a tailored suit. It just fits their every move. And if I say something that they don't get, I'm not looking in their eyes and watching their body language. I just know, well, that didn't go in very deep. So I look for a metaphor, I tell a story, and then all of a sudden, boom, it clicks. And I can feel it in my body. Oh, okay, there's a flow, like breaking a log jam. All of a sudden, the logs are going down the river. So I realized that I'm able to go inside a person and release their blocks. And I describe it more like, a stack of sliced cheese, you're just peeling up a layer of cheese at a time, or wax. If you have these, how beeswax is, that structure, like a webbing kind of thing. Well, if you have a stack this high, it's very light, very fluffy. You compress it, it's warm, and you compress it down to very thin, like a small book, and then you put it in the refrigerator, you can't peel them apart. So here's the image of what I realize I'm doing is having a hair dryer and hitting the top layers very gently on low. And then when they get soft enough, just helping the person peel it off. All right, let's move this one and let it go and dispose of it. Like let it go out and imagine it burning up in the sun or melting or whatever, going someplace else. Transformation. And I realized that I'm able to go inside someone else and help them release their blocks and start a mechanism that continues after we stop working that day. And I also had a talent of dealing with non-physical. Bothersome creatures, we'll call it. Not my calling, not something I wanted to do, but whenever a psychic got stuck or a healer had a problem, or there was, a client they couldn't deal with, I would get the call. I kind of realized that, I have certain talents, even though I don't have confidence, even though I'm reluctant to do some of those tasks. You pay attention to the assignments you get, and that shows you the talents you need to develop more and refine the tools. But I can't really think of anything profound in that work, except my own meditative experiences sometimes have been phenomenal, where I'm in these bright places that just are amazing.
Yeah. Why don't you talk about like some of the training that you do offer for people, and like the books? Maybe talk about some of the things that that you've produced and what you do.
Okay, I just finished one last year. It's really thick. That's a book. It's called Your Amazing Itty Bitty Book. So I was a friend in California. She's putting these out, and I said, all right, let me do one on psychic development. So the limitation is 30 pages, 15 topics, 2 pages each, very wide margins. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had to consolidate a 9-week development program, plus enough from the weekend preparation self-discovery class to make it work. Mm-hmm. So it was an exercise in condensation. And I have an editor helping me. The first book I put out was Psychic Tarot, the companion book for the Aquarian Deck in '85. Mm-hmm. And back then, the tarot books were about the cards, about symbols and astrology and numerology. No one was saying be psychic. Here's how you read the cards. Meanwhile, I was running a psychic organization for a year, nonprofit group, when I quit my job in '81. And we had the tarot readers at the tables, and they're doing the cards and talking to the person. And then they would do this. They'd tilt the head up, put one ear up higher than the other, be looking into nothing and listening to something, and then talking to the client. So they were getting psychic impressions just like everybody else. So I'm watching them go through this. And so I said, all right, there's a theme here. So nobody's teaching the card readers to do that. So that was my job for the book. And then I was going to write, psychic tarot. So I was going to write mystical tarot and then spiritual tarot, mm-hmm. and become, tarot king or queen or whatever they call it, emperor. Well, that's what my guide said. Want to be the emperor of tarot, or you want to get a master's degree in metaphysics? Keep studying. So I was told not to write the second and third book, that others will. So one of my students that I talked about the title Mystical Tarot wrote Mystic Tarot. And then someone else saw that and said, oh, what's next? Spiritual Tarot. Mm. So the right people wrote the other books. Mm-hmm. It was like, do not become famous as a tarot reader. We have other things for you to do, mm-hmm. later on. Mm-hmm. So my whole career has had that edge to it. So the tarot book was out there for a while, and I made guided meditations, 4 of them, 2 for the body, progressive relaxation, opening the chakras, self-healing, and 2 for exploring the chakras, visiting the inner child, going to the heart temple, or going down inside, counting down 21 to 1. So I still have those 4 basic meditations. Since then, I've done 2 more guided meditations on top of it. One going back into past lives to bring the power and the abilities from those lifetimes into the present. and another one that I finished about a year and a half or so ago, where the second body meditation is expanding consciousness, filling the physical etheric body with your consciousness, which is from the first recording. And then you open the 7 chakras. The first one drains tension. This one opens self-healing. So you bring energy in one side, down to the gut, and out the other. That technique I was telling you about, for releasing without trauma. And I try to teach that in everything I do. That's the key technique that I was saved by. So this next one opens the chakras in ascension energy colors instead of the rainbow colors. So it's like a pink gold energy coming up from the earth. And the chakra has sort of a pale, so the base chakra would be like a pale red. Like, you know, the sea glass, like a red sea glass on the ocean. And then this pink gold energy comes shining through it. So I bring this energy through the 7 chakras. And then I have guardians at the base chakra standing at the door saying, you know, are you ready to do this? So, and the person's already in a trance state, so to be very honest. And then they hit a gong, and the chakra awakens, and Kundalini starts coming up. And I was reluctant because I want to be raising someone's Kundalini from a distance. And the guidance said, no, we'll have checks and balances, the guardians, you know, at the beginning. And when the energy came up to the heart, the concern was, if it comes up too fast into the head, the ego receives it. And the person thinks, oh, I must have been Cleopatra, I must have been, you know, Buddha, whatever. So what happened here was it went out my shoulder blades as wings. And I realized I was doing this exercise, you know, in a meditation for something else, creating this electromagnetic pattern behind me, like a reservoir. So it came up, went into the reservoir, and just what you need comes up to the brain, the third eye. And then as the person starts to connect it back to their heart later on, it's not on the CD. Then as they start going to the bliss pool, there's a special place in the heart for this. When they do that connection from the crown third eye to the heart, then more power will come up to the ego as it distributes it. So that was one of the more recent ones. Right now, I'm kind of stalled on the project because everybody's locked in. I'm in the final stages of taking the mandala cards and having each one emerge from a dot out to a full-blown and turning and then disappearing. And I composed the music for it, very soft, ambient music, but a little bit more vitality because it's a score, music's deferred. So I have this video that'll be coming out hopefully this year. And I'm working on actually guitar songs that I wrote back when I was a teenager in my 20s. I'm back doing my music again. And I'm working on the book, which is self-discovery. So 3 days a week, I'm working with an editor, about 2.5, 3 hours each day, going through every paragraph until that paragraph sings. I go, that's it. The information was raw. It was collected from over 30 years of classes. And it was assembled in different times, different languages, different voices, even different fonts. So I was.
Spirits are coming in now.
Yeah, and I've learned to not pay attention to phones, and you know, I'm always breathing. It's a bird singing in the tree. I don't have to pay attention to it. So I'm working on I have two music CDs done, 30-minute and a 60-minute, so people can do meditation or hypnosis or healing. Or I use it for my classes, just playing soft in the background. And then when this video is done, I'll take the music from that and soften it, make it more ambient for that purpose. So I'm always working on these projects. And teaching in Japan 3 times a year. And now I'm looking to get back into more US. I may need to go to Europe to help promote the book when it's done, but I want to focus more on, like I used to. I used to go to Dallas, Houston, New York, Colorado, a bit of New Mexico, and California. So, you know, I want to start doing once a year to different places again, like I used to.
Can you tell people where they can access more information about you? Like, you have a Facebook page, a website, where would they go?
Okay, if you want to be disappointed, go to my Facebook, because I'm hardly ever there. So to me, Facebook is where the Japanese people are putting pictures of their lunch on it,
Yeah.
There's good stuff there, but it's, I'm not a Facebook computer
Yeah.
social network
Sure.
kind of person, but I leave it there, and once in a while I put something on there and run and duck.
Mhm.
My website is really my core. It's higherselfdiscovery.com, and I'm also creating a higherselfdiscovery.jp. So as I translate things, the people in Japan can have access.
Mhm.
And I'm just starting to do blogs. This is my first blog. So instead of doing a blog, my editor gives me a piece of writing that I did. He extracted, he's mining from my past.
Mhm.
I said, okay, fix this. And I just go in and I, make it fill in. Like I can hear the guide saying, you were supposed to say this during that class, you didn't. And then I turn it into a page or whatever it is, and then I give it to him, and he's calling it a blog. So I wrote something on the coronavirus just in my journal, because I journal a lot, periodically. And he took the journal and polished it enough. So I made one blog so far. So I have one item on the blog on the coronavirus, and I just started a YouTube channel. Another person started up for me. And I think I have one thing on there. So I'm just starting to load things outward. But Higher Self-Discovery website to me is a teaching site. So I'm going to be interacting more, when I travel less. I can be at home and, every week pay attention to it and do the more social. I'm actually want to hire someone to help me with the social network. I'm really not and have never been good at promoting myself. I love the work. I don't like selling it.
Right. We kind of seem to keep dancing around the elephant in a room to a degree in terms of we're in the middle of a world pandemic with COVID-19. What insights have you gotten in relationship to that? Because, I guess to me, we always have to see the silver lining in the cloud and so forth. There's definitely meaning here, I would say.
Yeah. And it's also, don't hold your golf club up in the air while the cloud is right overhead too.
Yeah.
You have to deal with the reality of it. I have to be a little bit careful. It's like if someone just lost grandpa to the virus and you say, well, old people are old, and that's not appropriate. I mean, it's true, but it's not the time. Not at the funeral. You don't say, well, he'll come back again another lifetime. Why are you all crying? Let's have a party. Unless you're in New Orleans, and that's how they do it. So with that disclaimer, one of the things that has made me so dedicated to staying in this field, even through all the financial struggles and everything else, is I had an assignment when I was taking my advanced classes, and we would be given assignments. We were supposed to meditate on them during the week and then come back with a report. And I was given something called the Jupiter effect. And that was around 1980, I think. And the book that was out there said all the planets are going to be on one side of the sun, and the Earth is going to be on the other, and it's going to tear us apart. And I remember reading a lot of prophecies also in the Bible, the Kali Yuga cycles, the Native American, what's it, Navajo prophecies, Hopi prophecies.
Hopi, that's right.
So, so the visions that I saw were hard to see. And they were being shown to me in such a way that it was explained to me. In other words, like my son, grandpa is sick, and in the next few years, this is going to be happening to him. So I was kind of shown in that way that help is going to be needed. And I need you to study these things so you can be a helper when these things happen. So what I saw was the Jupiter effect. Was nothing. I said nothing really is going to happen that I can see. But while I was in that mode, something opened up, and I saw deeper into the future. And in fact, I did write a novel. I'm going to be softening it. It's a bit too hard, sort of beyond Stephen Kingish. So I'm going to be softening it, making it more like PG-13. That's one of my projects soon, called Ian the Boy, and putting it out as a softer version. But the book 2 is about pandemic. And one of the symptoms is it goes in the brain. The person gets aggravated and agitated and freaks out. So
Mhm.
basically you have people freaking out all over the world, and you have people who have the fingers on the nuclear buttons and wars. And I saw natural disasters. I saw economic depressions, food shortages, starvation, natural disasters, uh, all kinds of things.
Mhm.
So I figured I'll put it in a fictional form.
Mhm.
So that's how I was dealing with that.
Mhm.
So what I see now is people are being shaken awake.
Mhm.
In other words, that job, well, I mean, I even hear my son who's like 41. And, 3 years ago, he said, and I'll have this job until the kids are grown, and then I'll do this. And I'm saying, don't make plans. I mean, that's a good plan, but also have sections and, have other possibilities
Mhm.
taking place.
Mhm.
So I see this as making people realize that pandemics do happen, that the whole world is connected. You can't isolate yourself. It's
Right.
not China's fault, or it's just, oh, that's happening over here. Oh, the earthquake and the tsunami was in Japan, doesn't affect us.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, the radiation and the debris washes up on the coast of California.
Mhm.
So it's to wake people up to the difficulties that may happen in the future. Now, I don't predict near future.
Mhm.
Is it my generation, my sons, my grandchildren's, or their children's? But this is what I see. So I think this is going to help people, especially people at the fringe of metaphysical training, take it more seriously and say, well, if this happens, am I going to be someone on the food line, or am I going to be someone serving the food?
Mhm.
Am I going to be someone sick and afraid to come out, or am I going to be someone helping other people
Yeah.
that are sick? And economically, you can't depend on the future. So even someone like me, where I'm, using a charge card to get the video equipment to make that video, thinking, well, when I produce the video, I'll pay you back. Now it's all disrupted and all that crashes in on you.
Mhm.
So I think it's going to make them deal with finances, career, family very differently.
Mhm.
They're cherishing their time. Like I just did a FaceTime with my son, and he's with his two boys, 5 and 8, and they're showing me their artwork. And I bought him a microscope like 2 years ago, and now it's on the table, and they're doing that for their home training. Part of class is go to the microscope and look at new things, and go outside and get the wing from a bug or something and stain it and see what that looks like. So I think it's going to alter our intimacy patterns. Um, I don't know how it's going to about shaking hands and hugging. That would be a shame
Right.
if that goes away.
Right.
Um, but I think it's going to really alter not just our views, but our actions, and most importantly, our view of the future,
Mhm.
the way we prepare for it.
I think it's also a good opportunity for us to reflect upon our values, as well, and to think about what are the most important things in our lives.
Mhm.
Whenever you strip all the other things that you think are important, then you find the things that really are important.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that. Now I try to explain it to my son, because he thinks, he used to think I had sort of a failed lifestyle. Not that I'm a failure, but hey, Dad, if you do it differently, you could have money and metaphysics and
mhm.
this and that. And I think he's realizing, because now he wants to do his music,
Mhm.
and that awakened in him. He's realizing, and in fact, it happened a few years ago, because he lost his job. He actually left it in a noble way. He got a new boss and it wasn't working out, and he just said, I'll just do something different.
Yeah.
And he went through a period of unemployment that made him realize you can't trust companies or careers and that.
Right.
And he was doing his music at the same time, and his music just became more and more important, and that attracted people to him. They saw him do open mic one night, and these two guys said, "Hey, would you sing with us? We're trying to get our old band going." And he ended up, becoming known in the Tacoma area, just coming up as this thing hit. Now they can't perform,
Mhm.
so he's waiting to go back into it. So he turned down a job in Seattle, a good job, promotion. He said, no, by the time I get on the train, the kids are waking up. By the time I come home, the kids are getting ready for bed. I'm not going to miss this time in their lives.
Mhm.
So he actually used his savings to be with his kids.
Mm-hmm.
And then this thing hit, and now he's already a good caretaker for the kids, teaching them things, and so it taught him the beauty and the love of the family.
Yeah.
Very different way. So it's making us awaken in that way.
Yeah, I remember someone telling me, say, you know, if you're doing what you love, you'll never work a day in your life.
Yeah.
You know, so.
And that's basically what I'm doing: music, poetry, writing.
Yeah.
Talking to people deep. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's what I want. It's like in my college days, we used to sit in a circle and try to have these deep conversations. I do that for my work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Well, it looks like we're about an hour in here, probably about time to wrap it up. Anything you want to close with? Anything further you want to say?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna just see what I say. Everybody is their own teacher. Everybody has their own guidance system. So as an instructor, my job is to develop rapport with the persons in the subconscious too, and get that alignment and then connect that to their guidance system better, stronger, heavier wiring, whatever is required. If they're beginners, introduce them conscious mind to subconscious mind, mind and body, inner child, intellect, and get them to work together. And as you're doing that, you're passing through the heart, and that awakens the heart. And it stirs and says, okay, this person's getting ready for me. So my job is to just help that person take their next step, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. So if they love Buddha, well, I just tap into Buddha. You know, the beauty and the love and the teachings and the compassion. You know, if they're agnostic, they're scientific, they don't believe in any stuff, well, I'll explain brain chemistry and quantum mechanics, whatever they need. So each person, you already gathered your basic information. You already have your basic personality. Just go inside and see how it works and discover yourself. That's what I do to help people. Thank you.
Craig, I appreciate your time. It's been good having you with us. Hope we can talk again in the future sometime.
Yeah, anytime. It was fun. Thanks.
All right. Thanks.